In her paradigm-shifting book, Jessa Crispin reminds us that feminism is not simply about women having a seat at the table, but more importantly, female empowerment is about addressing structural and systemic sources of oppression and injustice. She writes, by fighting your own way into inclusion, you are not improving the system. You are simply joining the ranks of those included and benefiting. You are doing your own excluding and exploiting. In other words, you, a woman, are also the patriarchy. I've been reflecting a lot more recently on the truth of Jessica Crispin's words when I observed the willingness of some women to discuss quote unquote women's issues, but their adamant refusal to discuss sources of oppression that affect women that stem from other aspects of that woman's identity, be it her ethnicity, race, or religion. And as women, I believe that our feminism must be committed to an anti-racist and anti-violent framework. We cannot claim to be pro-women, yet condone state violence against female bodies. A recognition of the intersectionality of women's identities means that our advocacy for women must necessarily address structural inequalities facing women due to every and any aspect of their identity. And nowhere is this truth more relevant today than it is regarding our public discourse on Palestine and the ongoing violence in the Gaza Strip, which has had a disproportionate impact on women and children. So to be quite authentic and frank, I am joining you today with a broken heart, a heart that has been utterly devastated by the images of death, destruction, displacement, and starvation that I have witnessed in the last 171 days. Yet the fact that you are here to listen to women's narratives globally is a sign that you care. It is a sign of a healthy beating heart, not just in the physical sense, but more importantly, in the spiritual sense. And unfortunately, it seems to me as an Arab American woman that not many people in this country really care about the plight and suffering of our Palestinian siblings in humanity. And I'd like to remind everyone that our ability to empathize with the suffering of one group of people does not negate our ability to empathize with another group's suffering. It simply means that we are human and that we acknowledge the humanity of all people. In the last 171 days, the ongoing violence in Gaza has claimed the lives of 32,414 Palestinians and 1,200 Israelis on October 7th. And 70% of those who have been killed in Gaza are women and children. The question is why? There are many reasons why, but I recall early on in this war, an elderly Palestinian man explaining to me that we were seeing a disproportionate number of children and women because they are often inside their homes. And obviously, when you are targeting residential areas and women and children are often in their homes, they were some of the first to go. And of those Palestinians killed in the last 171 days, at least 13,000 of them are children. Many of them had not even reached their first birthdays. And according to one statistic, one Palestinian child is killed every 15 minutes in Gaza, which means by the end of our program today, at least 4 more children would have died. And every single one of those children is someone's son, someone's daughter. And recently, I witnessed a brief interview with a woman who had struggled for 8 years to become pregnant, and she finally had a child at the start of the war, only to lose that child to the ongoing violence. Beyond the phenomenon of unchilding, as one scholar has called it, which is a loss of children due to state violence, one of the major challenges facing women in Gaza today is during childbirthing and pregnancy. I've heard countless cases of women who've had miscarriages because of the traumatic stress of ongoing bombardment. I cannot imagine, I cannot fathom what that must be like. Sometimes, we hear something that sounds like gunshots in my neighborhood, or it might be something else, but it sounds like gunshots, and my heart skips a beat. And I just can't imagine being in a situation in a war zone where there's just ongoing bombardment and you don't know whether your family will be next. Also, I want to share with you the story of the cousin of a friend of mine here in the US who had a high-risk pregnancy. The doctors told her she was going to need a cesarean section, but they had no anesthesia in Gaza. and they told her it basically cost $10,000 per person. Now she was married with 3 children already, and you can imagine how expensive it was. She was lucky that she had a cousin in the United States, and through all of his network, we were able to raise the money we needed to get her, her husband, and 3 kids to evacuate Gaza so she could have a healthy delivery, which she did, thank God. And but that's unfortunately not the case for all Palestinian women. According to UNICEF, about 180 women in Gaza are giving birth every day, 180 women. Yet only a third of the territory's hospitals are even partially functioning. So these women sometimes are not even allowed the right to birth in a hospital, and they are having to birth in shelters, in their homes, in the streets, or an overwhelmed healthcare facility where there isn't proper hygiene and sanitation, and then the risk of infection and medical complications are on the rise. Beyond the disproportionate level of death, over 74,787 Palestinians have been wounded. Of course, we're all aware of the famine right now and the acute food insecurity facing 90% of Gaza's 2.2 million people. UNICEF recently released a statement reporting that 1 in 6 children in Gaza are severely malnourished. Mothers in Gaza are struggling to find clean water and baby formula for their newborns. Families are having to sell their possessions to buy sacks of flour, which is very scarce and expensive. And some people are eating animal feed to survive. In one video by Middle East Eye, which you can follow on YouTube, one mother in Gaza resorted to giving her infant a date to suck on because she could not find any infant formula for her baby. Also, a few weeks ago, I reached out to a friend in Gaza. His name is Nadal, to see how he was doing. He replied with the following: I am still in Jabalia camp north of the Gaza Strip. The situation is very disastrous. We are now eating the grains of birds and animals. Some of you might be shocked by these statistics. Again, all indicators of a healthy beating heart, a spiritually healthy heart that has not lost touch with God's commandment to protect human life and love his creation. Yet around my country and even in my own city of Charlotte, what I have seen is that the loss of Palestinian life is not treated equally as a loss of Israeli life. The suffering of Palestinians is not deemed as worthy of our attention or concern as the suffering of other people. I don't want to go into too much time because I wanted to give you a specific example, but I realized that I might be out of time. I just wanted to mention that there was a resolution passed here in my own Mecklenburg County that failed to make note of the number of lives, of Palestinian lives killed, and only mentioned the number of Israeli lives that were horrifically murdered on October 7th. And the resolution's complete erasure of Palestinian deaths sent a clear message to my community, a message that we have heard time and time again, that Palestinian lives don't matter to those who wield political power. Palestinian lives don't matter according to the dominant discourse. Yeah, we know as believers, whatever we believe in, that all human beings are equal, that all human beings descend from the same primal parents. We believe that all human life is valuable, irrespective of what the dominant discourse tells us. And with that said, I'm hoping that our country will be awakened to the way the dominant discourse either erases the suffering of dead Arab bodies or blames them for their own deaths, just as our country woke up to systemic racism when we finally, because of the indisputable video footage of the murder of George Floyd, I have hope that our nation will wake up to the moral inconsistency we've seen in the way violence is disproportionately covered. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mubarak, for that very eloquent and those important remarks. I hope we can come back to this during the Q&A.